Andrew, I'm curious from your perspective. You've now seen our other side of the world on the entrepreneurial side and the political world. I mean, how do we get government and entrepreneurs working together more effectively to solve these issues?
Well, I love what you're trying to do, Ankur, because I think a lot of it is that entrepreneurs are often attracted to areas where they feel like they're going to be able to operate more freely and efficiently. And then if you hit a highly regulated zone, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait. And then some entrepreneurs like you are like willing to, like swim through the muck and figure out, okay, like what can I do in one of these and sometimes there's a great opportunity in the highly regulated zone, in part because the regulations have provided kind of like a mote of discouragement. Like I worked in healthcare software in the mid 2000s, and I used to start joking that healthcare is where good ideas go to die. Because because like a lot of the practices aren't super rational or efficiency minded, and the measurements are spotty at best. And so you wind up having people adopt solutions based upon other criteria. So that there's a massive opportunity here, man. I mean, what you're doing is awesome. I think on the political side, I do think that we have to figure out which regulations are holding us back at this point, because there are a lot of rules that made sense when you drew them up, and they had a fine purpose. But then in terms of the impact, like it's a double-edged sword, and then we didn't undo that rule. And then we then made another whole matrix of rules on top of that one that like spread on top of it, then everyone's looking around. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty much what's going on.
But I guess, is there a way that you can like change the culture of that internally? I mean, because some of it's the rules, but a lot of it comes down to the culture of the people that work for for the government agencies, right? Where there's a distrust of the private sector, number one, which is probably fairly warranted given some of the players in the market today. And then there's also this culture of fear of trying something new because no one wants to get fired. So how do you create a culture where the people who do implement these policies and these rules like want to find ways to work with innovators and be more innovative as a government?
Well, so government bureaucracies have a number of features that make sense in their context, but do not necessarily make sense in terms of pushing the envelope in some of the issues you're talking about. So they're highly regulated themselves. They're like each worker tends to have like a whole set of rules that are constraining what they can and can't do. They're built for very, very long-term continuity. And so there are a lot of folks who would be better suited, frankly, to doing like a certain tour of duty within government. I talked to a guy yesterday who'd like worked in government for eight years, and he was a great guy and had accomplished a lot. But he pretty much said, like, I did my tour of duty, and I think that that's fair. But then there are people that the organization generally is built for like multi-decades long continuity, and so you have people that operate in that time frame. And then if you show up and we're like, hey, let's like get all this stuff done in 10 months, they're like, 10 months? Like I've been here for 10 years and I'm going to be here for 10 years more. And so, right. Don't necessarily
slow down.
Yeah. You don't need to be that gung ho. And one organization that does a great job of this that, I think we can get lessons from is an organization called Code for America that enlists various people who are engineers in coding talent and says, look, like solve this government-based issue, and and then you can return, to the industry. There's also like the U.S. Digital Service that does things at the federal level. Oh, you'd love it. So you remember healthcare.gov?
Yes.
When we all remember healthcare. So when the launch had problems, a group of techies led by a guy named Mikey Dickerson from Google came in and patched and fixed the website in real time. It was like a very big deal. And then they stuck around to try and fix other things, web-related and tech-related. And so they had a workforce of like the low hundreds in DC that they just went around consulting with various agencies, being like, hey, like, can we like help you with something? Can we fix things? And they ended up with this like massive backlog of projects because everyone was like, we would love your help with this thing. So and And it also had a tour of duty aspect because a lot of them were techies who would join the U.S. Digital Service and then do a tour of duty for 3 or 4 years and then cycle out. So there are things that I'm optimistic about. I'm going to share an idea with you, Ankur, that I'm going to give it to you, and then maybe you can do it. And if there's one human who might be able to do it, it might be you. As you'll see what I mean in just a minute. So far we've talked about what you're working on in 2 of the big 3, housing and healthcare, and they're both awesome. And so here's something in education that I've long reflected on. So you know that I spent a number of years running what became the country's largest GMAT prep service that helped get thousands and thousands of people into various business schools. And I was looking at that value proposition and it was like, wow, why are these people all heading to business school, which is like a very significant opportunity cost and career sacrifice. Yep. It's like 2 years. The tuition is, maybe
insanely high,
like $110,000, $120,000,
$200,000 at some of these schools.
Like it's gone up a little bit. So yeah, let's call it 200,000. And so I made a list of things that motivate people to go to get these to get their MBAs. One was the credential for sure. It was the professional network, the personal network, to some extent, like the book learning, but I'm going to suggest that stuff's not that central, the consideration. To some extent, for many people, it was like a career reset or a career switch. It's like you've been working continuously for a period.
Yeah, I call it the quarter life crisis. It's when people went into banking or something and burnt out and want to have a quarter life crisis and need a 2-year spring break for $200,000. So
there is a pivot, right? There's a career pivot involved where it's like, okay, yes, I'm in this track and then I'm going to get my MBA and there's going to be this big career pivot. So then I thought to myself and I said, okay, could you provide the credentialing, the professional network, the personal network, the career pivot, like some of the book learning in a shorter time frame than 2 years? And so I was imagining something that I'd call it would be like the McKinsey summer retreat. That's like 3 months. Everyone comes together for this period. Instead of 2 years, it's 3 months. But then you have an environment where people actually develop real relationships and friendships. And the thing is about the McKinsey aspect is that I chose McKinsey because I was like, what's like a very big brand name that could actually have the heft that would actually be competitive with like the, HBSs of the world or whatever the programs are. And so then I thought, it's like, could you deliver like something in like a 3-month period at a fraction of the cost that had a lot of the social elements, the credentialing elements, the networking elements, and even like the employer appeal elements if you like, and then I thought like, wow, like what an opportunity that is. Because there are all these young people that in my mind, like are looking for certain things and the MBA is like a very luxe version of it and very expensive version of it and a very enormous opportunity cost. It's like, could you compress it and deliver a lot of the benefits?
I love it. Listen, I love it. It's like a much smarter version of an executive MBA. It reminds me of an idea that if you decide to ever get out of the politics thing and come back to the business world, maybe you could start, because this is something I've been wanting to do and frankly, we don't have the capacity to do, right? And it was inspired by a lot of the stuff that you've been talking about around AI, automation. How do we reskill the workforce, provide them stability, right? And so there is some period in this transition between automation coming in and people fully being out of jobs, right? There'll be a transition point where it happens gradually for some sectors first. The problem is today, if you lose your job, that is also the point at which you need the most amount of financial help. You've just lost your job. And the point where lenders want to do the least to help you. It's this really bad dynamic, right? And the problem is as these jobs go away, it becomes harder and harder to ever get back on your feet. And there's no real clarity on what to do to get the new skills or what path to take or what courses, whether it's a summer program like this, or if you're even more vocationally taking a different type of program to get back in the workforce. And so I had this thought of what if we created like an unemployment lending retraining program, right? So you lose your job, you actually, depending on your thing, qualify for an emergency set of funds, right? And it is priced at a high interest rate because you are high risk at that point. However, it gives each person who takes out a loan a clear path towards reemployment that they can use. If they commit part of those funds towards training, and maybe those are provided for free, every step of the way that they progress, their rates drop. So it incentivizes the de-risking of the loan while providing people, frankly, the clear path to reemployment. So you lose your job during X. We say, you know what? Here are the 5 paths that actually could be, most feasible, least feasible, et cetera, based on your current skill set. And here are some emergency funds to get back on your feet. And that is an incentive for you to go kind of requalify and take those courses to get rehired. There's something here. It's rough, but if anybody could pull it off, it's you.
I love anything that helps smooth out these transitions because, as you know, I don't think that we're doing enough as a society to help people manage these transitions. And like you said, the path's actually very unclear for a lot of people as to what that next opportunity would look like. A lot of it hinges too upon regions where the economy's shifting in a way that sometimes the next opportunity for you might be a few states away, but right now you don't recognize that that's the case. In theory, the public sector would be doing more in this direction, and it's something I'm very passionate about. So I can see why you raised it, man.
Something there.
Yeah, no, and I like the way your mind works too, because you're trying to smooth over some of the financial ups and downs, and you're trying to bring try and front load the value. It's you see the value that's going to happen when someone does get that new job, and then you're hey, let's try and bring it forward to where they need it.